So we are here. We are ready. It's the last one of our sort of calendar year. Thank you for being patient. Last week we had another thing, so now it's like now we're there though. June 1st. I see Sandy's gonna come in, and so our goal today is to do about 400 years, a little less, 350 years of Jewish history in about an hour and change. And so to that end, I have grabbed a selection of the book of Second Chronicles, knowing me a long selection, but still a selection from the book of Chronicles that sort of gives us a general idea of the kinds of writings we're talking about, which is basically as First Chronicles. If we remember back a couple of weeks, First Chronicles was all about the Davidic dynasty, and it really started for us death of Saul, and then the entire first book of Chronicles is about King David. But Second Chronicles begins with his son Solomon, and it goes from Solomon all the way to the Babylonian destruction of the temple in 36 chapters. So it is about the Solomon, line, the Davidic line through Solomon, and it whitewashes a bit of history, sure, because you got to get all that in 36 chapters. And it sort of reminds us, in the eyes of the author, who the good guys are, the people who live in the land of Judah, and are from that still have the Davidic line, versus the northern kingdom of Israel, boo, because they sort of split off and do their own thing. So we're going to read a little bit about that today as well. So with all of that said, we're going to just dive right into it because there's a lot of history to do. I'll tell you, I'm getting a little, rusty in my zooming here. I got to get myself all together. It's been a little while. It's like riding a bike. Okay, here we go. Screen share. We're good to go. So we're going to begin at the beginning, as we should. Second Chronicles chapter 1. Linda White, Linda, do you want to unmute and begin?
Sure. Solomon, son of David, took firm hold of his kingdom, for the Eternal his God was with him and made him exceedingly great. Solomon summoned all Israel, the officers of thousands and of hundreds, and the judges, and all the chiefs of all Israel, the heads of the clans. Then Solomon and all the assemblage with him went to the shrine at Gibeon, for the tent of meeting, which Moses, the servant of the Eternal, had made in the wilderness, was there. But the ark of God,
okay.
The ark of God, David had brought up from Kiriath Jearim to the place which David had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem.
So logistics, a little bit of kingly logistics. So he's going to start ruling, right? So what does he do first? He gets the leadership team together, right? He gets his officers, he gets the judges, he gets all the important folk. If you're gonna have a coronation, right, you got to invite the nobility, so to speak. You have to invite the people who have power and influence. So they're gonna go to Gibeon, which has the tent of meeting there. Has the ark is somewhere else, but so like they're trying to get everything together for this big party, so to speak, trying to organize all the logistics. If you throw a big party, we know sometimes it's hard to get everything together in time, but they are going to do that now. Linda, give me one more.
The bronze altar which Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, had made, was also there before the tabernacle of the Eternal, and Solomon and the assemblage resorted to it. There Solomon ascended the bronze altar before the Eternal, which was at the tent of meeting, and on it sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings.
Barbecue. Okay. And so we have the altar that's there, the one from way back when, right? That Bezalel created in the book of Exodus, all the way back, right? And so we're having this really big official ceremony. And 1,000 burnt offerings. That's a lot of lamb. It's a lot of beef. I hope everyone's hungry. It's a lot of stuff to sacrifice. Okay, so they did that, party time. But now we have a dream sequence. Ooh, we have a little bit of a dream sequence. Debbie, give me some dreams here. That night.
That night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask, what shall I grant you?" Solomon said to God, "You dealt most graciously with my father David, and now you have made me king in his stead. Now, O eternal God, let your promise to my father David be fulfilled. For you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Grant me then the wisdom and the knowledge to lead this people, for who can govern your great people?"
Okay, so right here we have the story, the origin story of Solomon's great wisdom. So God appears to him that evening and says, "Oh, Solomon, what do you want? Sort of the genie in the lamp moment. What will your wish be?" And Solomon, of course, wishes for wisdom. And his request is looked on very positively. Right, Debbie? Give me a little more.
God said to Solomon, "Because you want this and have not asked for wealth, property, and glory, not have you asked for the life of your enemy or long life for yourself, but you have asked for the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to govern my people over whom I've made you king. Wisdom and knowledge are granted to you, and I grant you also wealth, property, and glory, the like of which no king before you has had, nor shall any after you have."
Oh, you see how nice that is. He gave the right answer. He chose wisely. So that was a very good thing. He made the right decision, the right call. And so not only did he get wisdom, not only did he get curtain number one, he gets curtain number 2 and number 3 also. He gets everything. It's like, if you remember back in the day, when I would be sick from school and I would watch, of course, The Price is Right at 11 o'clock. I'd watch Bob Barker, and they had the showcase showdown at the very end. And if you bid, your bid was close to 250 or less, whatever it was, you won both showcases. Yay! That was always a really big deal. So here, Solomon wins both showcases. He wins everything. Okay, Drew Carey's good too, but I'm a Bob Barker guy. Okay, so anyway, we don't need to dwell on that much longer. We're going to fast forward here a little bit. So now, the party's over. He gets inaugurated. He gets, he is now king. He gets to rule. But now we got to start building. We got to get to work, because remember, David couldn't do this. He wasn't allowed to build the temple because he was a man of war, and Solomon is going to be a person of peace. So Solomon gets to build, but again, got to get to work. So Sharon, what do we do to get to work here?
Solomon mustered 70,000 basket carriers and 80,000 quarriers in the hills, with 3,600 men supervising them. Solomon sent this message to King Huram of Tyre: "In view of what you did for my father David in sending him cedars to build a palace for his residence, see, I intend to build a house for the name of the Eternal, my God. I will dedicate it to God for making incense offering of sweet spices in God's honor, for the regular rows of bread, and for the morning and evening burnt offerings on Sabbaths, new moons, and festivals, as in Israel's eternal duty." Where am I?
Sorry.
Yeah,
that was an aggressive scroll. The house?
The house, got it. "The house that I intend to build will be great, inasmuch as our God is greater than all gods. Who indeed is capable of building a house of God? Even the heavens to their uttermost reaches cannot contain God. And who am I that I should build God a house, except, I'm trying to find it. Every time, let me see where I am.
Except as a place.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Except as a place of making burnt offerings to God.
Yeah, I know we won't miss that part of this as I scroll through and confuse everybody. So Solomon is asking for what? Give me some materials, right? Give me some cedar and some wood because I'm going to build God a house. I'm going to build something really nice. So can you help me out here and give me some stuff? And so Solomon's not done asking for all this stuff. There's more to ask for here. Brahms, you want to take over there?
Now send me a craftsman to work in gold, silver, bronze, and iron, and in purple, crimson, and blue yam, and who knows how to engrave alongside the craftsman I have here in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom my father David provided. Send me cedars, cypress, and algum wood from Lebanon, for I know that your servants are skilled at cutting the trees of Lebanon. My servants will work with yours to provide me with a great stock of timber, for the house that I intend to build will be singularly great. I have allocated for your servants, the woodcutters, and those who fell the trees, 20,000 core of crushed wheat and 20,000 core of barley, 20,000 bath of wine, and 20,000 bath of oil.
A lot of stuff, right? So we got to get these dudes here. We got to get these craftsmen there to work. Much like when we remember in Exodus, when we're building the tabernacle, right? When we're building the tent of meeting and everything goes with it, you have to have all these craftsmen that have different skill sets. You need your smiths, to work in the metals. You need your, people who sew, these the people who are tailors and seamstress to sort of create different things that need to be created with that one. The woodworkers, and then of course, in order to have the wood products, you have to have really good wood. You get the cedar, the cypress, all that other good stuff. And you got to feed these people, right? And you can't have all these thousands of craftsmen come over and be like, the buffet is closed. You have to have lunch. You got to have lunch. You got to have dinner. So let's get some wheat and barley, everything else that we need. And of course, a little bit of the Manischewitz, right? We need a little bit of the booze and to keep these workmen happy. So that's his request. It's not for a little bit of stuff, it's a big ask. It's not nothing. And so Marilyn Warner, Marilyn, how does Huram of Tyre respond?
Huram, king of Tyre, sent Solomon this written message in reply. Because the Eternal loved God's people, God made you king over them. Huram continued, Blessed is the Eternal, God of Israel, who made the heavens and the earth, who gave King David a wise son, endowed with intelligence and understanding, to build a house for the Eternal and a royal palace for himself.
Okay, so he's got a good idea. He's in favor of doing this. Let's get one more here.
Now I am sending you a skillful and intelligent man, Huram Abi, the son of a Danite woman, his father a Tyrian. He is skilled at working in gold, silver, bronze, iron, precious stones, and wood, in purple, blue, and crimson yarn, and in fine linen, and in engraving and designing whatever will be required of him, alongside your craftsmen and the craftsmen of my Eternal, your father David.
Renaissance man, right? He can do a little bit of everything. Working in gold and silver, stones, wood, blue, purple yarn, all sort of good stuff, engraving, whatever you want. He's a master artisan. He can do it all. Very nice. Actually, give me one more, Marilyn, over here.
Sure. As to the wheat, barley, oil, and wine, which my Eternal mentioned, let him send them to his servant. We undertake to cut down as many trees of Lebanon as you need and deliver them to you as rafts by sea to Jaffa. You will transport them to Jerusalem.
About an hour drive, not so bad if you're taking the highway. But back then they didn't have it, so it was probably a little more of a schlep. But it's not a bad trip. outside of Tel Aviv, if you don't hit traffic, you can get there pretty quick. I'm actually talking as a side note to our tour guide tomorrow for our upcoming Israel trip, so we can actually plan our upcoming Israel trip and get a sense of what we're doing. So I'll keep you all posted on that one. Okay. Let's keep going. Melissa, I skipped you by accident. Sorry. So Melissa, do you want to pick up there? Solomon?
Solomon took census of all the aliens who were in the land of Israel, besides the census taken by his father David, and they were found to be 153,600. He made 70,000 of them basket carriers and 80,000 of them warriors, with 3,600 supervisors to see that the people worked.
Very nice. What is slightly glossed over in that paragraph? He made them this, he made them that. We got another word for that here. He basically created some forced labor, a little bit of servitude. So it's sort of a gentle nod to it, but it is not as clear as in the Book of Kings, where he's like, he created a class of indentured servants and enslaved them and had them build the temple, because that's less polite. And so in this book, they give it a little bit more of a cleaner, a cleaner description. But this was a lot of work. They had a lot of dudes in charge of this to create this huge temple, this house like no other houses. If we would continue reading 3 and 4, you would just get a lot of details about wood and this and that and creating this with how many of that and cubits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we are on a little bit of a time constraint. Plus, frankly, unless you really want to build one yourself, it's not that necessary to go through all that detail. So let's get to the end result here, the final product. Melissa, when all the work?
When all the work the King Solomon undertook for the house of the Eternal was completed, Solomon brought the things that his father David had consecrated, the silver, the gold, and the utensils, and deposited them in the treasury of the house of God. Then Solomon convoked the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes and the ancestral chiefs of the Israelites in Jerusalem, to bring up the Ark of the Covenant of the Eternal from the city of David, that is Zion.
Now it's ready, right? They built the house. Now they can get all the utensils, the clay kodesh. They're going to bring them in. And again, with the with the announcement, that he is going to be king, with that ceremony installing him as king, his coronation, you also need, in this case, also the powers that be. You need the elders, you need the nobility to come witness this moment when the temple is going to be consecrated. And so he's making sure that everyone who needs to be here is here. And of course, that centerpiece, they're bringing the ark with them, to where it needs to be. Okay, Melissa, give me one more.
All the men of Israel assembled before the king at the feast in the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had come, the Levites carried the ark. They brought up the ark and the tent of meeting and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. The Levite priests brought them up.
It's a very emotional moment, right? Because before this time, things have been really scattered. And one of the big themes of this book of Chronicles is bringing things together, is creating a temple, creating a worship service, creating a central point where worship is going to take place. And so here they're creating that space. They're creating the temple and all of its accoutrement, of all the surrounding things that they need. And it must have been a great scene. It must have been really powerful to see it. And of course, with that comes sacrifices as well. Sacrificing sheep and oxen in such abundance they couldn't be numbered or counted. Somebody pass me a ribeye. That would be very nice. But it's just a lot of fun, I guess, when they're doing all this stuff. The sheep and the ox and all that other good stuff's happening. Okay, so let's continue over here. just for, so we get the full picture here. Gary, you want to pick up?
Okay. The priest brought the Ark of the Eternal's covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the house, in the Holy of Holies, beneath the wings of the cherubim, but the cherubim had their wings spread out over the place of the Ark, so that the cherubim covered the Ark and its poles from above. The poles projected beyond the Ark, and the ends of the poles were visible from the front of the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen from the outside, and there they remain to this day.
Well, not really, it turned out. But at the time of writing this, it remained there to its day. But not so much anymore. Now they're probably in the Vatican somewhere. That's where the smart money is. But that being said, if it's not there, it's lost to antiquity. But I'm guessing the Vatican has it.
Don't the Ethiopians claim to have it?
I don't know what they claim to have in terms of the Ark of the Covenant.
There's I'm trying to think of the name of the church or cathedral. It's in Ethiopia. I can't even remember the name of it, but they claim to have it, and they have a priest who never leaves the building, who guards it. But that's part of their belief system, so we don't know.
Shtick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if they thought it was there, the IDF would be there tomorrow. But that being said, either that or Indiana Jones, one or the other, would be there. I'll give that a Google. I'll check that out. That's actually very interesting. Here, Gary, give me one more. There was nothing.
Okay. There was nothing inside the ark but the 2 tablets that Moses placed there at Horeb. When the Eternal made a covenant with the Israelites after their departure from Egypt. When the priests came out of the sanctuary, all the priests present had sanctified themselves without keeping to the set divisions. All the Levite singers, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, their sons and their brothers dressed in fine linen, holding cymbals, harps, and lyres, were standing to the east of the altar, and with them were 120 priests who blew trumpets.
That's right. Again, it's a really big deal. Here we get this connection from Sinai, right? The tablets, that are there in the covenant. And you have these priests singing and dancing, doing their things. And the trumpets, if those who remember my sermon from Friday, I had mentioned, these trumpets that were sounded in times of great joy and times of great peril, these silver trumpets. So everyone's trumpeting and they're singing, amen, amen, and it's great. Okay, so, this is a very nice ending here, right? The priests could not stay and perform the service because the cloud came back. That cloud of the eternal, the cloud of glory filled the house of God. So it really is that beautiful sort of moment that brings it all together. We're not wandering anymore in the wilderness. We're not, disconnected, spiritually anymore. And now we are built God a house, and symbolically, and quite frankly, literally, God's presence, God's glory fills the temple. And so it's, again, a really powerful moment showing that God's presence dwells amidst the people again after a little bit of a hiatus. God is back in a very, again, real, almost tangible sense with the people.
Rabbi,
yeah.
How come that if you're going to the Orthodox, there is no music? And yet here is the example that they have an orchestra, so to speak.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And so with their belief system is that once the temple was destroyed, once the temple was done away with, we're still in mourning for it. And because we're still in mourning for it, we can't have music during Shabbat services because we're still upset about this happening. And then when the temple's rebuilt, the third temple in the Messianic times, then we can have trumpets again. But you know what? I'll take the trumpets now. Bring me Friday Night Live. I will be happy to hear a little bit of good music any day, especially when it comes to worship. A great question. Okay, we're going to fast forward a little bit and get to, of course, the Queen of Sheba. Another story that's a little bit more salacious in Kings. Here, it's a little bit of the Disney version of this story. But I think that there are other places where This story has a little bit more intrigue, but this is, as I said, a little bit less so on that end of it. Linda Bilo, you want to read a little bit? You got to unmute.
The Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame and came to Jerusalem to test Solomon with hard questions, accompanied by a very large retinue, including camels bearing spices, a great quantity of gold and precious stones. When she came to Solomon, she spoke to him of all that she had on her mind.
Okay, she's coming for a nice conversation and discussion. Why not? It's a long schlep for a cup of coffee, but you know, she came out just for the conversation, I guess. Nothing else. Nothing to see here. Let's keep going.
Solomon had answers for all her questions. There was nothing that Solomon did not know, nothing to which he could not give her an answer. When the Queen of Sheba saw how wise Solomon was, and the palace he had built, the fare of his table, the seating of his courtiers, the service and attire of his attendants, his butlers and their attire, and the procession with which he went up to the house of the Eternal, it took her breath away.
Oh, isn't that nice? He's just so brilliant. He's so wise. She loves him for his mind. So he's a really smart cookie. And you know, and then she gives him a little compliment here. So actually, Linda, give me one more. She said to the king.
She said to the king, "What I heard in my own land about you and your wisdom was true. I did not believe what they said until I came and saw with my own eyes that not even the half of your great wisdom had been described to me. You surpassed the report that I heard."
Oh, isn't that nice? What a good man. A nice man. A good catch. True. You know, so, you know, in here we don't get that sense that she was maybe one of the 8,000 wives he had. But let's keep going. Sandy Sunter. Sandy, you want to give me a little reading?
How fortunate are your men, and how fortunate are these courtiers of yours who are always in attendance on you and can bear your wisdom. Blessed is the Eternal your God, who favored you and set you on God's throne as a king before the Eternal. It is because of your God's love for Israel, and in order to establish them forever, that God made you king over them to execute righteous justice.
Yeah, so good, right? Look, some compliments here. Very nice thing. And then because he's so wise, he gets a parting gift.
She presented the king with 120 talents of gold and a vast quantity of spices and precious stones. There were no such spices as those which the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Also the servants of Hiram and Solomon were brought gold from Ophir, brought algum wood and precious stones. The king made of the algum wood ramps for the house of the Eternal and for the royal palace, and lyres and harps for the musicians, who like had never been seen in the land of Judah. King Solomon in turn gave the Queen of Sheba everything she expressed a desire for, exceeding a return for what she had brought to the king. Then she and her courtiers left and returned to their own land.
Yay, very nice. And so she gives him all of these things, these gold and the stones and the whatever it is. And then he uses them, you know, for the temple, very nice, right? For the palace, he sort of creates, you know, with it. And Solomon, you know, gave her something too, you know.
A child.
Yes, thank you. You jumped ahead of me. Definitely true. According to tradition, he gave her something that happened in about 9 months. You know, it took a little longer to, you know, for that gift to arrive. It was on back order on Amazon, but you know, but it did get there. And so, according to legend, she has Solomon's baby. Though, according to tradition, Solomon was a very virile king. And so he had more than his own share of children. He had other people's shares of children too. And so, yeah, lots of good stuff. Mazel tov all around. This is just more of the same, all these gifts he has. And eventually, here we are sort of at the end of the chapter, and he passes away, here. And so, again, some of the other not so PG stuff in his story gets sort of pushed out, much like David's. They don't sort of concentrate on some of the stuff that was a little trickier, like the numerous wives and concubines that sort of led him astray from God. That part gets a little bit of the edit, that's out of this book. Doesn't mention any of it. Just 40 years he reigns, and then he passes away. And good old Rehoboam comes up as king. Now the fun begins, because David and Solomon knew what the heck they were doing. And now we get other kings that come after David and Solomon. A little bit of a mixed bag. Some were pretty good. Others were pretty rotten. And Rehoboam sort of fits, he's got some good things going for him. Other stuff, not so much. And we will see his perhaps lack of political experience in his introduction scene, which sort of sets the stage for the breakup, of the United Kingdom of Israel. Lasted 2 kings, David and Solomon. This Shemegegi gets there, and then now all of a sudden we have civil war. So let's see how he proceeds to mess it up for everybody. Rehoboam, our friend Rehoboam. Renee, you want to give it a read?
Okay. Right. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to acclaim him king. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, learned of it while he was in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon. And Jeroboam returned from Egypt. They sent for him, and Jeroboam and all Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam as follows. Your father made our yoke heavy. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke that your father laid on us, and we will serve you. He answered them, come back to me in 3 days. So the people went away.
Okay, so we have a little bit of a setup right now, right? So Rehoboam is ready to get crowned, right? He's ready to become king. But there's another candidate in the mix, so to speak. Jeroboam, who is not a child of Solomon, right? He is not a child of the Davidic dynasty. He had to beat a path out of town for irritating Solomon once too many times. And so he sort of took a walk and went to Egypt. But now that Solomon's dead, he's coming back and says, look, Rehoboam, you seem like a nice guy. Let's chat a little bit. Let's sort some stuff out. Your dad, no offense, no disrespect, bit of a jerk. He sort of made our life a little bit more complicated than it had to be. Our yoke was heavy. A lot of taxes under Solomon, a lot of forced labor under Solomon, some things that weren't hunky-dory, right? It was a little rough. So, this being said, maybe you want to take it easy on us a little bit. Maybe you want to be a little bit less harsh than your dad had a little bit of a reason to be. Maybe you want to just handle things a little bit better. And so, Rehoboam is no dummy here. He doesn't want to make a commitment right away. So he goes, you know what? Let me talk to my guys. I got to talk to my advisors. Got to have a little conference. And I'll get back to you. Give me 3 days. Not unreasonable, right? Give me a little time. Makes sense. Okay, Renee, give me one more.
Okay. King Rehoboam took counsel with the elders who had served during the lifetime of his father Solomon. He said, what answer do you counsel to give these people? They answered him, if you will be good to these people and appease them and speak to them with kind words, they will be your servants always.
Okay, so what do they say? Be nice. Make nice. Go and say, yeah, sure, we'll lower the taxes a little bit. Maybe we'll ease up on the servitude. It'll be great. Strawberries and cream. It'll be wonderful. Okay, let's have a nice time together. Easy. Okay, so Rehoboam, is a doofus, and he decides, what? Let's not take that advice. Let me get another piece of wisdom. Bob, you still here somewhere? I can't find you. There's Bob. Okay, you want to read a little bit? Bob, you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, you want to read a little bit?
But he ignored the counsel that the elders gave him and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him, were serving him. He asked, "Did you counsel that we reply to these people who said to me, lighten the joke that your father laid on us?"
Okay, so you know what? He rejects the elders, and who does he talk to?
His buddies.
His buddies. He talks to his friends who know nothing about nothing. He goes to his group, his gang, and say, hey, what do you think I should do? I know what the wise elders and the council say, but, what do you guys who have no experience? What do you think I should do? And Bob, I'm sorry. Here's a great paragraph, but I'm sorry you got to deal with it. Go ahead.
And the young men who had grown up with him answered, "Speak thus to the people who said to you, your father made your joke heavy, but you made it lighter for us. Say to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's loin. My father imposed a heavy yoke on you, and while I add to your yoke, my father flogged you with whips, but I will do so with scorpions."
Okay.
He's a nice guy, right?
Well, he's got these idiot friends, who aren't giving him the best counsel. You think, my father was a big man, that he was a man of great stature. For me,
Yeah.
I'm much bigger than he is in all senses of the words. I'm a much bigger man. And so you think what he did was bad. I'm going to make it even worse. And you thought he was whipping you hard with the whips. I'm going to whip you with scorpions. I don't even know what that means, but it's not good. I'm not sure he whips someone with a scorpion, but I wouldn't advise it. And so that's the advice his lovely friends give, is to make himself a bigger man, so to speak, and give them a tongue lashing and scorpion lashing, perhaps. That seems to be his way of looking at this.
They're in it for what they can get.
This ain't gonna go well. Bob, give me one more. Jeroboam.
And all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day, since the king had told them, "Come back on the third day." The king answered them harshly. Thus King Rehoboam answered the elders' counsel. He spoke to them in accordance to the counsel of the young men and said, "I will make your yoke heavy, and I will add to it, my father flogged you with whips, and I will do so with scorpions."
So he takes the advice of his friends. He irritates this delegation. And then basically, because he didn't listen, right, to his people and the elders, now, because of that, as a result, Israel, as in the northern kingdom, sees the king doesn't listen and says, we have no portion in David anymore. We're done with you. We're done with the Davidic dynasty. No share in any of this. We're going to pack up our stuff and we out. We're going. Okay, so you can handle your own business. We're going to leave. So the 10 tribes that are there out of the 12 pack up and they move north, and then the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, are left in the south. So it isn't really much of a war, so to speak.
The
It's more of a
divorce.
disentanglement. They decide they have enough of each other. We're out. And they go their way. Rehoboam tries to make a little power move here. He sends out Hadoram, who's in charge of the forced labor, and he gets stoned to death. So they said, you know what? maybe not so much. And Rehoboam grabs his chariot and gets out of Dodge. And as it says here, Israel has been in revolt against the house of David to this day. Because when this is written, again, you have that division still, between both kingdoms. That people in Judah think that the ones in the north are doing the wrong thing, and the ones that are up north think the ones in the south are doing the wrong thing. So they're just bickering with each other. Surprise, surprise, Jews who can't get along with each other.
Are these Saul's people?
No, they all dead. Saul's folks. These are, different leadership. Sort of the nobility there that they rise in power, and so the discussion comes to do you need to have a king that is from the line of David? And the author of Chronicles, the one who wrote this piece, thinks the answer is yes. You have to have a king that comes from the line of David. And other folks said, what? The line of David, we don't care for these people. They're not nice. They're making us, enslaved. They're giving us high taxes. We asked them to, for a little bit of a reprieve, and we got a not so polite answer in return. So you know what? We're out. And we're going to create our own kingdom up north. You guys do you, we're going to do us, and that's going to be it. And this infuriates the author of Chronicles because, as I mentioned, part of the theme of Chronicles is the centralization, right, of the religious worship, the centralization of the cult. It has to be in the temple, big T, okay, the big T in Jerusalem. That's the one place God's presence dwells there, right? That's the one place we're supposed to offer sacrifices. And now, because of some bad interpersonal relationship issues, some politics get involved here, and now things are split. So the people in the north aren't schlepping to Jerusalem anymore to do sacrifices. They're going to do it in other places instead, right? Which is going to be a problem for at least the author of this book, that they want things to be at the big T, at the temple, not in other places. So the rest of the book of Chronicles details the reigns of the different kings. So like Rehoboam gets a chapter or two, about, his life and how he fortified the towns. He does some good things, even though he was a bit of a yutz, and then he dies, and then you go to the next one, the next king, which would be, it's still Rehoboam. He gets a longer run. He fights with Egypt a little bit, but now we're going to fast forward. As I mentioned, it was sort of a bloodless, civil war, so to speak. Not so bloodless, actually. We had a little bit of an actual armed struggle here. Linda, you want to give me Linda White. Linda White, you want to give me this over here in the 18th year?
In the 18th year of King Jeroboam,
Yep.
Abijah
Yep.
became king over Judah. He reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Micaiah, daughter of Uriel of Gibeah. There was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. Abijah joined battle with a force of warriors, 400,000 picked men. Jeroboam arrayed for battle against him, 800,000 picked men, warriors.
So Jeroboam, who we remember from the Rehoboam days, so Jeroboam becomes king over northern Israel. And Rehoboam was king over the south, but he dies. And Abijah, becomes king. And now, he doesn't have a long reign, as we're going to see here, but he reigns over Judah. And now we're getting some conflict, right? Now, they're saying, look, you guys split from us, and that makes us mad. And so, I'm going to summarize a little bit, but, listen to me, Jeroboam. You know that the eternal God of Israel gave David the kingship. So what are you doing? Why are you splitting from us? it's not a good idea, for you to do this in this case. You are opposing us, you're opposing the sons of David, and you've made golden calves to yourself, and you're being terrible by not coming to worship with us in the temple. Come on back. That's the right thing to do, etc., etc., etc. And of course, Jeroboam says, I disagree. And they fight. But according to this story, according to this chronicler, so to speak, Abijah, he wins, the Judah wins, and they kill 500,000 people, the men of Israel, right? It's probably an exaggerated number. But they win. And why do they win? Because they relied on the eternal God of their fathers, right? And so they're the good guys in this story, the Judahites, as opposed to the northern kingdom of Israel. And eventually Jeroboam gets killed, here in the end. The Eternal struck him down and he died. So what we're going to have to do for time's sake is we're going to fast forward to the end of Chronicles all the way. So you have all these wonderful stories of kings, and they were good or they were terrible or whatever it is. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of blood, sometimes less so. Sometimes they built a lot of cities, because building cities is pretty important. Fighting. But now we get to one of the most important kings that we have here, where this almost ends with our friend Josiah. Josiah, the boy king, 8 years old when he takes the throne. And he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did what was pleasing to the Eternal, following the ways of his father David, not his actual father, but, ancestor David, without deviating left or right, doing the right thing, right? In the 8th year of his reign, he's a teenager. He's 16. He really begins to connect to God and to his ancestry. And then in his 12th year, when he's 20, he starts destroying a whole lot of stuff. He wants to get rid of all different shrines, sacred posts, idols, molten images, the altars of Baal, all this stuff. He's going in and he's wrecking everything, because idolatry, of course, is a big no-no. And so he wants to make sure that there's no idolatry, even to the extent of burning the bones of the priests on their altars. He was not soft on crime. Josiah was pretty hard-nosed for a 20-year-old. And so he is making sure that he's trying to eliminate all of this idol worship. Smashing everything, more smashing, more breaking. But now we get a really fascinating passage here. He's purging the land of all this stuff, and he commissions this dude, Shaphan, or Shaphan, really, is what it should be. Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, in order to repair the house of God, right? So it's been a little while. There's disrepair. It's been a couple hundred years. There's disrepair. You got to get someone in here, got to do some maintenance work on the house of God. And so they get the high priest in here, the high priest Hilkiah, and they got to get to work, right? And so they're has anyone ever gone through like a big house renovation? So like they're creating space. They're I hear a dog barking.
It's mine.
That's just me. That's fine. It's fine. So everyone needs to study a little Torah. So the repair person, the repair people are like knocking down walls. They're fixing up stuff, and all of a sudden, what happens? They find a scroll. The priest Hilkiah finds a scroll of the Eternal's teaching given by Moses. Just finds a scroll in the back somewhere. He knocked down a wall, and all of a sudden you find a scroll. And so they look at it, they authenticate it, I guess. They have a decoder ring, and they authenticate this is, in fact, an authentic thing from the time of Moses. I found a scroll of this teaching in the house of God. Hilkiah gives it to Shaphan. Shaphan brings it to the king, and then they read it. They read this scroll. And then when they read the teaching, Josiah is not amused. Josiah tears his clothes, because he looks at this and goes, we're not doing this stuff. Like, this is what God wants us to do, and we aren't doing it right. We got problems here. God's going to get really, really mad. And so he goes to Hilkiah, and says, we got to fix this up here. We have to almost have a campaign here, a return to morality. We have to take this scroll and basically tell the people, show the people, that we're doing the wrong thing, because God's going to be really, really mad. God is going to be vexed with all this idolatry. So this scroll just so happens to coincide with a lot of what Josiah wants to do anyway. And so the scroll that he found, did he really find it, or was it written at that time? Smart money is on the latter. And I will give you even further information on this. This scroll that was found was likely, again, written at this time, but it's a scroll that you all have read. You've read this scroll many times in your Jewish lives, because this scroll was very likely Deuteronomy. And so the Deuteronomy, second law, Deuteronomos. So it is, and Deuteronomy is a recap, right, of the first four books, or at least of the middle books of the Torah when it comes to Jewish law. And Deuteronomy focuses a lot on idolatry and how bad idolatry is, and about how important it is to worship God and one God and coming together, and also has rules about kings in it as well. So it is very likely that Josiah had a couple prophets, couple scribes maybe write a book that made sense for his time, right? And that way they can say, hey, look, Deuteronomy, and they can sort of show it to everybody and say, this is what God wants. This is what, we believe that God wants. And by making it an older scroll that was found, it gives it more legitimacy than just Josiah saying, hey, dudes, this is what we need to do, right? That doesn't work as well. But if it's from Moses and it's from God on Sinai, because again, what are the odds of this like ancient holy scroll being locked away in a cupboard somewhere? It's like they found out we're looking for the milk. It's like, oh, by the way, we found Deuteronomy. It was next to the eggs. Like, we didn't know that we lost it, but it was in the pantry. I mean, who knows? The maid moves everything, kind of thing. Like, I don't think that's realistic. It was very much likely composed during that time. And the language of Deuteronomy, the actual words themselves, it has been argued, paint to a later date of authorship than the earlier books. And so they found Deuteronomy, i.e. they created Deuteronomy. And so it's a really cool moment in Chronicles. And so again, this is where they all sort of go, okay, that's great. And then they obey and they do the right things according to the traditions, where Josiah, removes all the abominations from the whole territory. And again, he was a good guy. Didn't deviate from the teachings left or right. Josiah ends badly. He's killed during a battle. He gets shot, I believe, by an arrow. I forgot exactly what happens to him. They have this really nice Passover moment. But he, archers shot King Josiah. He's out fighting the Egyptians, which he shouldn't have done to begin with, but he decided to fight the Egyptians, and they kill him, there. And that's the end of Josiah. After Josiah, and here you see like Jeremiah composed laments for Josiah. It was a really big thing that he passed away, and he was a good dude. Then we get Doofus King after Doofus King after that, and we get a lot of Drek coming in here. This is actually the last chapter of Chronicles. So you have this guy Jehoahaz. He's king. He was 23, and he reigned all of 3 months. He didn't last long. The king of Egypt came in there, smacked him around a little bit. Then you got another king here, Eliakim. He changed his name to Joachim. Instead, it gives him a little bit more of a better sort of kingly name. But it was a joke in a way because the Egyptians are really at this point pulling the strings. The Israelites are pretty beat up at this point. Even though Joachim reigns 11 years, he was sort of a puppet king in a way. He wasn't really, things were descending rather poorly. And then Oiva Avoy, our friend Nebuchadnezzar comes, marches against him, brings him to Babylon in chains, ransacks the temple. Joachim doesn't get a lot of love here. The abominable things that he did, maybe if he acted a little better, this wouldn't have happened, is the whole point. Then his son sort of reigns, another boy king, 8 years old. He reigns about 3 months and 10 days, didn't last long either. I love that it says he did what was displeasing to the Eternal. The kid's 8 years old. What's he gonna do? He didn't put his toys away. He was displeasing to the Eternal. So anyway, he doesn't last long. He gets dragged out there and to Babylon. Then Zedekiah is king. He reigns a little longer, but again, Babylon's in charge here. Zedekiah has the great idea of trying to fight more against Babylon. It didn't work out so well. Babylonians come in, as we famously know, and wreck everything. They come in, they destroy everything. Everyone goes into exile. Sad, sad, sad. And then, this is all about destruction, right? They come in and they're killing everybody, they're exiling everybody, they're stealing everything. Sad, sad, sad. Okay, and so those who survived exile, they're there until the rise of the Persian kingdom. And now we get to the very last part, the last paragraph in the Hebrew Bible. And so we're going to give this a little bit of a look-see. And we remember this, by the way, from some of our other readings, from Ezra, from Nehemiah, from some of the other works that we've read. In the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, so now the Persians have come in, they have knocked off the Babylonians. The word of the Eternal spoken by Jeremiah, the prophet, were fulfilled. So all things are coming to pass. It's all coming together. The Eternal roused the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia to issue a proclamation throughout the realm by word of mouth and in writing as follows. Thus says the king of Cyrus of Persia, the eternal God of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and have charged me with the building God a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any one of you, all of God's people, the eternal, his God, be with him and let him go up, let him go back. So it ends with this note of hope. Vaya'al, they can make aliyah, they can go back to Israel. What a beautiful message in the end. You have that really rough time of destruction, things going downhill, downhill, downhill. But at the very last part of the Bible ends with a note of hope, right? With this idea of return, of redemption. And so we begin in Genesis, right? In the Garden of Eden, right? With exile, right? We begin with exile from the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve eat the fruit, they get kicked out, right? So we begin with exile, even in Genesis. And what do we end with? We end with return, right? And so the entire 39 books of the Bible, it's again circular. We get back to where we're supposed to be. Not Gan Eden, not Garden of Eden per se, but the promised land. We go back to Israel, and it has this vision of us vaya'aling, so to speak, of making aliyah and of going back up where we're supposed to be. It really is a fantastic way to, for the Bible to end. And the ones who are putting it together, I think, recognized that thematic trope, that they were able to say, look, we begin with exile, and we end with hope. We end with return and redemption. Which is, I think, a really beautiful message. And that the last letter of the Hebrew Bible is a lamed. We often talk about how the last letter in the Torah is also a lamed, Yisrael. It's the last word of the Torah. but the last word of the Bible is also a lamed. And so if you put that lamed with the vet that starts the Bible, you get lave, bereshit, so you get the no dot in it, so you get the vet. So you put the lamed and the vav together, you get lave, which is the Hebrew word for heart. And so the entire thing sort of encompasses, again, that emotion, that love together. We get heart at the end of everything.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I
Yeah,
love that.
I think so too. I think it's a nice sort of message to end on for us in terms of our year of study. We did it! We completed
Yay!
the Bible!
That was a good ending.
Oh
Thank
my
you,
goodness, we made it!
Yay!
What are we gonna do next year?
Yeah, what will we do?
Start all over.
Yeah,
No.
Genesis 1:1.
maybe we should start to review all of this.
Genesis
Keep it
1:1. My
Right.
goodness. Thank you all so much for accompanying me on this
Thank
journey
you.
together. This was
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rabbi. It was
Thank
very
you.
good.
Thank you.
It was
Thank
an
you.
interesting way to do it, obviously via Zoom, but I'm really so happy we came together online to do this, week in, week out. And as I've mentioned more than once, this really is like my favorite thing that I get to do during the week, to study Bible with you guys. So I really appreciate it. Appreciate all of you, joining me here for this experience.
Sure.
I hope we learned a little something. And as we keep going with it, as we say, turn, everything is within it. We keep sort of studying, keep learning together. And so I'm really excited. We conclude one chapter and we begin another one. So
Thank
was
you
good.
very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Good
Have a
night,
good
all.
summer, everybody.
Thank you.
have a good summer.
Good night.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Catch you all
See you
on the flip.
soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.